What's good? How y'all doing? Welcome to another edition of 60 Days of History with ZaZa Ali. Today is day 13, and we're going to be focusing on Hatshepsut's famous temple, Pharaoh Hatshepsut's famous temple. And I was very intentional in chapter 5, the final chapter of Ancient People, a social studies and history textbook. Of course, it's befitting that I close the book out with her because I've always been very fascinated with her story. But I also wanted to really spotlight her temple and how grand and how marvelous and how powerful and beautiful it was, not only for it to have been constructed some, 3,000, more than 3,000 actually years ago now, but a lot of the architecture that you see that is credited to Greco-Roman culture was actually started in Kemet. And so the fact that this temple has withstood the test of time, and it shows the columns, and it shows a lot of those different architectural representations again that are usually attributed to them. Well, we can go back and see the buildings ourselves and see that it was already being happening in Africa thousands of years ago. But I'm very fascinated, have always been very fascinated by her story, and so I made sure to put a lot of images and a lot of content and information in terms of her temple, because I really think it speaks volumes to the frequency, her frequency, who she was, what she embodied, and the legacy that she left behind. At Hatshepsut's command, Senmut designed and supervised her temple on a site sacred to Hathor in western Waset. Now, let me pause for a second. Senmut, also known as Senmut the Great, we also have a very extensive, focus on him within this chapter because he was very prominent in terms of, her rulership, her building, her construction of obelisks, etc. So, Senmut is another one of my, the fact that he was known as a genius and that he accomplished all of the things. I think he had some 80 titles. Another great African legend and hero, right, for our sons and our daughters. It sits at the end of a long valley built into high cliffs. The design has a clean, uncluttered look and appears to complement the landscape, like a line between heaven and earth, with its series of courtyards, each smaller than the first, colonnades decorated with reliefs, shrines and inscriptions, and painted reliefs. Djeser-Djeseru recorded much of Hatshepsut's history. Centuries later, the Greeks would adopt this architectural style for their structures. Pharaoh Hatshepsut of the 18th dynasty was builder of one of Egypt's most popular monuments. Senmut, also known as the Overseer of Works, constructed her temple in the region now known as Deir al-Bahari. Rather than build upwards from a base, the mortuary temple was built downwards, being cut out of a mountain. The whole building was hewn from the rocks by hammer and chisel. This result is a pillared terrace structure that wait, let me read that again. This result is a pillared terrace structure that rises in 3 stages with 2 central ramps, also carved and sculpted. The ramps are long and slope with a gentle gradient. Their position divides the temple into 2 symmetrical halves. Entrance halls of limestone columns lead to the interior chapels dedicated to the deities Anubis, Hathor, Osiris, and Ra. Through the colonnade, the interior has wall reliefs that depict Hatshepsut's maritime voyages to Punt, showing also the row houses of that country. In its time, great sculptures embellished the building. There were over 100 limestone sphinxes. I went too fast on my video. See? I think I skipped one. Okay, maybe I didn't, but that's okay. There were over 100 limestone sphinxes, 22 granite sphinxes, 40 limestone statues of Hatshepsut, and 28 statues of Hatshepsut. And this is an aerial view. Let's go back to the aerial view. This is an aerial view during sunrise of the mortuary temple of Hatshepsut in Luxor, Egypt. The mortuary temple was built during the reign of Pharaoh Hatshepsut of the 18th dynasty. The temple is considered to be a masterpiece of ancient architecture. Its 3 massive terraces rise above the desert floor and into the cliffs of Deir al-Bahari, Her tomb, also known as KV-20, lies inside the same massive, not massive, but Massif, capped by El Kern, a pyramid for her mortuary complex. Across the River Nile, the whole structure points towards the monumental eighth pylon, Hatshepsut's most recognizable addition to the Temple of Karnak, and the site from which the procession of the beautiful festival of the valley departed. The mortuary temple of Hatshepsut was known to the ancient Egyptians as Djeser-Djeseru, or Holy of Holies, and is said to have taken 15 years to complete, between the 7th and 22nd years of Hatshepsut's reign. The construction of the mortuary temple was overseen by Semet, Hatshepsut's royal architect. The original temple had a garden with trees and vines and reflecting pools, but nothing like that remains today. Many of the pictures and statues of Queen Hatshepsut were later destroyed and erased by her stepson, Thutmose III, apparently because of jealousy or embarrassment, and the temple was damaged over the years by earthquakes and rock slides from the cliffs above it. Now, in terms of the situation with Thutmose III, just to give it some context, because there's a few different perspectives on what happened, it definitely appears that Thutmose played a hand in trying to erase Pharaoh Hatshepsut from history, and obviously, she sort of usurped his throne. Not sort of, she actually usurped his throne. So there was some bad blood there for a period of time, but then also Hatshepsut said that she basically was God, that God artificially inseminated, if that's the word to use, her birth. Basically, she was a man, that she was the child of God, a direct descendant of God, and that she was actually known as the incarnate of God in the person of a man, and ruled as a pharaoh, even though everybody could see that she was obviously a female. So, very fascinating story. And obviously she was a powerful woman, because we can see the results in front of us. But this is, again, chapter 5 of Ancient People, a social studies and history textbook. And this passage and all this information comes from chapter 5 of the book. Ancient People is a social studies and history textbook by ZaZa Ali. It is a full color, 349-page historical expose focused on ancient civilizations around the world. Available in paperback and hardcover, this book places emphasis on vocabulary, spelling, critical thinking, and more. There are more than 450 photos included in the book as well. Hawaii's last monarchy, the Moors in Spain, the Kandakis of Ethiopia and Kush, the African presence in Asia, and Pharaoh Hatshepsut. You can get more information in the description, or you can go to my website, zazaali.com. Peace and love.